And one of the stops of the pilgrimage was the island of Patmos, the island of St. John the Evangelist. How many of you have been there? Anybody? You've been there? No.
Never.
And you became a metropolitan?
On my list to do.
Okay, it's a bucket list. It is. But it's a we went, visited the island of Patmos, and that cave, that sanctuary, where St. John the Evangelist lived and where he was inspired to write the Revelations. And really, even though it's a very small, constricted space, that cave has a magnificent view of the ocean from there, and it was filled with other pilgrims, still you could get the definite sense of the sacred in that place, the definite sense of God. And in a sense, each and every one of us, whether we are on a so-called pilgrimage to a holy place or not, we are all, as we know, pilgrims. The Church leads us on a pilgrim journey to the heavenly Jerusalem. And who are pilgrims? Pilgrims are people who live the gospel, hope that we live the gospel or strive to, and we encounter Christ in those that we meet along the way. And the pilgrim seeks out what the ancient Celts called the thin places. That's an intriguing term, the thin place. What is a thin place? Well, a thin place in the idea of the Celts, the ancient Celts, is the boundary between the sacred and the ordinary. A place that is so permeable, so transparent, that the divine breaks through into the consciousness and everything becomes infused with the presence of God. And I can really say that when I was in that cave of St. John the Evangelist, on the island of Patmos, I could feel that this was a thin place. I could feel the presence of the divine there. Even though, as I said, it was filled with other people, I felt the presence of God. In one sense, we find these thin places, pilgrims go intentionally to these holy places, to the Holy Land or other places where they, to find these thin places, holy sites where over the years, the boundary between the sacred and the natural has been eroded through the prayers of the faithful, or maybe through some sort of a miracle that has occurred there. Every year, we in the Eparchy of Stamford, we have a pilgrimage to what I call the Holy Mountain of Sloatsburg, where the sister servants have their monastery and a grotto, and every year we have a Dormition pilgrimage. And many thousands of people come there every year, and they have for almost 60 years. This year I think there was almost 4,000 people that came there. And that truly is a thin place. A place where, a sacred place, where God seems to, the presence of God seems to burst through and imbue our lives and everybody that is there. Of course, many people find thin places in other areas. We find these thin places, or we are taught to find these thin places when we look in the face of another human being. Because in the face of another human being, we see Christ. We see Christ bursting out at us. Certainly, Mother Teresa, she didn't have to go to Jerusalem, she didn't have to go to Sloatsburg or to the cave in Patmos. But she saw these thin places. She experienced the presence of God in the face of every poor and destitute beggar that she ministered to on the streets of Delhi, of Calcutta. Those thin places. Why do I mention that, or we can, even in this beautiful place, we come up to a Canada goose, and we see that thin place, perhaps, in nature, in the wind, that we go walking in the lake, in the forest, and the sound of the wind through the trees. At any given moment, in any given place, we can experience a thin place, a place where God bursts through. And if we experience these thin places in nature, how much more we have to strive to experience them in our parish churches, especially during the celebration of the Divine Liturgy. Here, in a way, par excellence, this is a thin place where God bursts through from the supernatural into our natural lives in a very extraordinary way through our reception of the body and blood of Christ. And we should try to make this an extraordinary experience, not a mundane experience, for our faithful as well. Every time that they come to church, this should be an experience of that, what the Celts know as a thin place. The place where God bursts forth and becomes present in our lives. And not only for that moment, but so that we can take that presence and go out into the world and preach the Word of God through our words and through our actions. Slava Isusu Christu.